After 2 years of pandemic restrictions and border closures, this year should mark a return to normal for families looking to celebrate Christmas. I'm looking forward to a road trip just crossing state borders without having to dodge various checkpoints and the like. But people who are flying, of course, are facing exorbitant airfares that some people won't even be able to afford to fly home or elsewhere for Christmas. The consumer watchdog says they're keeping a close eye on potential price gouging by airlines, but many airfares are at least double their pre-pandemic prices. Joining me now to discuss all this is Felicia Mariani from the Victorian Tourism Industry Council. Good to talk to you, Felicia. The good news here is that you've got high demand, right? So far, the planes are filling. People are prepared to pay these high prices because they're so desperate to travel.
Yeah, you're right, Chris. We're really not seeing that there is any deterring of people's desire to travel as a consequence of the inflated airfares at the moment, which, they are higher than we've seen in a very, very long time here in Australia. And the reality is, again, you're correct. People are really desperate to travel and they're making those decisions to travel. They're choosing more carefully. They're looking at options. They're doing what they can to try and, save some money where they can. But at the end of the day, the desire to travel is certainly outweighing the cost of airfares at the moment anyway.
It must be inhibiting a lot of people, though. I know from my own personal experience, a lot of people who've travelled less often or haven't taken families with them and the like. Is the capacity there? The suggestion is that the airlines are almost up to their pre-pandemic capacity, but they haven't got all their planes back in service yet. Haven't they got more planes that they could be putting back into service so that they could satisfy that demand more easily and see prices go down, hopefully?
Yeah, it is absolutely an issue of supply and demand. There is more demand than there is capacity. You're correct. But I think the thing we've got to remember, it's not as easy to pull these planes out of the hibernation that they've been in over the last couple of years. And it's hard to kind of reconcile in our minds with this, Chris, but it was actually only February and March of this year that we reopened our borders. So it's actually only been about 9 months roughly that we're kind of back in operation from a tourism point of view, and border restrictions are over and people are moving freely. But it takes time to get that aircraft back in the air. Pilots need to be retrained. These planes actually have to go through a whole process of being recertified to get back into the air. So their ability to bring capacity on, sadly, is not as quick as we would love it to be. And, they kind of have to manage that demand because let's not forget, in the bad old moments when we did come out of those restrictions, those visions of Melbourne Airport and Sydney Airport with all the queues wrapping around the whole facility there. We don't want to go back to that. So we have seen the airlines limiting that capacity to be able to manage the staff issues that they've got, whether that's flight crew or whether that's ground crew. There's all these kind of mixes within the machinations of what's going on that's unfortunately creating the situation we're seeing right now.
Time to stop making excuses for them. They've just got to get back to some decent services and some decent prices. Before I let you go, a lot of Australians think of Bali as our holiday backyard. Your industry sells a lot of flights to Bali and back. Is that going to be diminished, that market, now with the news that Indonesia has outlawed sex outside marriage? Is that going to scare the tourists away?
I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch and see what happens with that one, Chris. I was quite surprised when we heard that the other day. Look, I do understand that there's some real limitations of the circumstances within which they're going to try and enforce that rule, if you will. But it'll be interesting to see if that does have an effect, because it certainly is. It would be a big deterrent, I would have thought, for a lot of people traveling from anywhere in the West to come there, because it's a natural thing now.
Maybe it's a good place for wives to send their husbands now on surfing holidays. Thanks for joining us, Felicia. I appreciate it. Felicia Mariani there from the Victorian tourism industry. Go to Bali, for a week of cleansing diet and abstinence.